making it today for one of the first episodes of our CADET conversations. The CADET program, as you already know, works on four main themes. We have communication, critical thinking, ethics, and gender sensitivity. Today we're meeting to talk a little bit about critical thinking as a topic. Why do we do critical thinking? What is critical thinking? Maybe we can start from there. Why we do it? Why we think it's relevant for us to have a conversation about this as trainers, and also why is this such an important thing for the cadets as well, the younger cadets as well today, and in perspective of employment, everything else. So we'll start off with that. Bala, we'll get your opening thoughts. Let's start by answering, what do you think critical thinking is?
I think critical thinking is where you're able to reason out why you're doing something or why you're able to decide on something, because a lot of times people tend to just take decisions on the go, or they either follow someone and take a decision. But in a very basic sense, it's in a way in which you can look out a lot of possibilities of my decision. How can I navigate all those possibilities and come to a conclusion? I think more in terms of in a layman language, I think we can put it that way.
So primarily reasoning is what you're saying. The ability to reason is what you're defining as correct thinking, and to think about alternative approaches to a particular situation.
Correct.
Right, Hari?
So you imagine if you have a problem or a situation to solve, how you are going to use your resources, and as Paula said, how you are going to reasoning that particular situation and problem. And it's like not using so much creativity into it, how you are using the simple things at a difficult situation. It's like doing simpler thing at a difficult situation using what are all the resources that you have.
Right. So to start, when you're approached at a crossroads, or when you're stuck in a situation, or when you're facing a challenge, you're saying, what do I really have to tackle this at the start? And let's not get creative, but let's think about some elementary things, some basic things. These are some things that I have. Okay. Ali?
So I think both of them are already added. So major thing is, when you think critically, you think logically. It's very simple to put it in a very simple words. When you think logically, you make not always the right decision, but at least you tend to make decisions that are better and will help you come out of that situation at that point of time. And maybe then you can think it over, how did I manage to handle that situation.
As a child, I think we start off with a lot of curiosity, right? And if we have that curiosity in us growing up, it should have continued during our childhood, all throughout our career, early career, late career. But why is it such an important topic? If we were so curious about things, and we used to ask a lot of why, how questions as kids, as toddlers, and so on. Why do you think is it lost somewhere in the middle? Where is it lost in the middle?
Maybe it's lost. It's not lost ideally, but I think people have we have like social media to get all our answers right at that moment. Initially, it was like, we'll ask our parents or ask our friends or someone whom we are talking to. Why is it like this? Now you just type a question and you get the answer. So the curiosity is not lost yet. It's still there, but the access to it has become easier.
It's become easier.
I think to answer your question, think about a robot and a human. So what's the difference between the both? If you tell a robot to go do something, you just go do something. But if you tell it to a human, they kind of reason out, or they kind of think about, will someone be harmed or do something or something. I think that's the main difference between a person who has critical thinking, or at least some reasoning skills or critical thinking skills, and a person who doesn't have. So if probably critical thinking was available to AI, it would have taken over all of this by now. So I think that's the big difference. But the reason which I'm trying to say is that kind of thought which comes into a reason or a solution. I think that's where there's a big difference between all this monotonous. To answer your question about, as a child you grow up and you're doing things, you ask a lot of questions, but as you grow up you kind of get into a monotonous lifestyle where you just do as someone says. So I think somewhere down the line we kind of miss that curiosity.
Right. I think somewhere the expectation to ask questions is you're expected to not ask questions. And one of the most basic things of critical thinking, I believe, is to ask questions. Right? Now, when we talk about critical thinking as a topic, we've got various modules. Do you want to talk about any one of those modules? let's talk about what that module is, how it is a part of critical thinking, and also why we think it is important for cadets today to talk about something like this. Let's start with fact versus opinion. Hari.
So fact versus opinion, it's like we already have it on day 2. We will explain what is a fact and what is an opinion, and how we are going to analyze a particular statement which was given by someone, or you are reading it somewhere. How you are going to analyze it, and how you are going to take, and how you are going to react it. Either if it's an opinion, it's your wish to take it, or it's up to your wish. Whereas the fact you have to agree, and how it is going to use in their life is like you are going to an interview. If you are giving your opinions, it may be different from an interviewer perspective, but as a fact, both will agree. So how you are going to use it in your daily life, that will improve your critical thinking as well, whether in a career perspective as well as in personal. What do you think?
So I think in facts versus opinion, we bring out a lot of thinking in the cadets. In a lot of we bring out like why is it a fact? Usually the curiosity that we were talking about right now is like why. They always have this question how, why. So we tend to bring out in them and explain them how and why it is a fact or why it is an opinion, how it differs to them. So I think they actually really think about it. So initially there are a few sentences that they don't understand, but eventually when we keep on doing a few more examples or some examples that are relatable to their daily life, when we bring it out, they understand, and then that is when they start thinking, and then they actually solve those examples, and then oh yes, we know this now. So it creates a lot of difference in them and why it is important.
The activity does encourage
Yes.
them to think about what those statements are. But why is it important for me to differentiate between a fact and an opinion? I am a 18, 19-year-old NCC cadet. Why should I care about if a statement is a fact or an opinion? How does it really affect me?
So imagine if you are applying for a defense job or something. This example I typically give to cadets as well. Imagine you are going for a defense interview, and one person is coming and saying, "Hey, you are applying for defense. You should go to a gym." So typically, this is an opinion. Whether you want to go it or not, it differs from person to person since it's an opinion. If the cadet doesn't have the knowledge to differentiate this is a fact or an opinion, if that person end up doing that and not getting into that particular job, it doesn't make sense, right? Whereas if consider another statement, if you are applying for this job, you should be this height. That's a fact. He can go back. That person can go back and refer. That's a fact. Whereas the opinion, it may affect their decision as well as the end result as well. So that's how I see it.
I think to precisely answer your question, Raj, so we read newspapers, like how Arlene said, a lot of them get their information from social media or any other unsolicited, could I say, or unauthenticated source or something. So by then, people, when they want to take a decision, whether to think if vegetable is good or non-veg is good or something, they kind of get swayed away from the actual content which they're trying to concentrate, but rather they go on a different footing in terms of emotions, in terms of their affinism to something, or in terms of what they believe in, but rather to put that into perspective so that they don't get swayed by their personal emotions, rather to just look for those catchphrases in whatever, be it Kellogg's whatever they're trying to sell, saying that it's good for heart, if it's going to be a message which is forwarded to your WhatsApp or a Twitter post, it's for them to take a step back and think, why am I buying it? Why am I reading it? Why am I forwarding it? So before I do that, it's for me to think and see, is it worth my time or is it worth someone's time to forward this unsolicited or unauthenticated or verified or not verified thing to someone? So I think the responsibility starts there. If they're able to do that, in a very bigger picture, I think what you call it in terms of the curve, the misinformation curve, it has to be flattened somewhere. So I think that's one way which they could do. And in terms of their personal intention itself, I think they would be a better person if they know that this is something which is not authenticated or this is something which is not verified. If they're able to do that, if they're able to differentiate that, be it their defense interview or be it in any interview they go, or even in a daily conversation which they have, you can stop a lot of personal relationships getting affected by this, because at the end of the day they'll know that's personal opinion and he's entitled to it, and it's because he has that opinion doesn't mean that is right or that is wrong. It's just his opinion. it stops there.
And a lot of credibility is associated with what I say. I need to ensure that what I say is right in terms of is it factually correct, and that's something that builds my credibility wherever I go in a personal setup, in a professional setup as well. Right. Let's move on to another topic. It's a little bit on the understanding myself part of it. We talk about who am I as one of our first modules when we start off the 2-day training. Is who am I critical thinking? Harleen, do you think?
So I think yes, they're actually thinking about themselves. I have spoken to cadets, and what they have said is, until today we never thought about ourselves. So when you ask them who am I, their usual answer is I am XYZ. They tell their name or they tell I am a cadet or whatever. They never actually think of who they are, of what potential they have, what capabilities, what is their caliber. So when you actually speak to them and get into the module and get into the activity with time, they actually towards the end of the module they come up with, oh, we never thought about this. That is their reaction, and that reaction actually makes us realize that they actually thought about it and they were absolutely involved in the module. So it helps a lot in understanding, thinking critically, this module.
But ours is only a 2-day training, right? I mean, there is only so much amount of thinking that they can do in 2 days. So how do you think that this is carried on after 2 days?
I think one of the big reasons why our 2 days has a very big impact because we kind of talk to them about their future. So we talk to them about how will you earn money the moment you graduate from college, how you're going to get a job. I think that strikes them in the correct place because they're probably mostly in their third year or second year or final year of college. When you talk to them about future in terms of ideal self or when you talk about your career objective, that kind of gets a spark in there. Right? At least I have seen people having that spark to know that okay, so first let me identify what is inside of me which I have and what which I need to improve for me to go for that goal or whichever they aspire to. I think in terms of thinking of that, I think they definitely carry it after the 2 days of training because they kind of have that aspiration that I need to join the defense or I need to be someone who has a private job or at least I need to bring food to the table at my house. That I think that's the reason why it kind of works for us because we kind of put it in terms of employment and employability, not to say that I'm here to improve your personal development or personality development.
One follow-up question: how does critical thinking help me get a job? We did talk about circumstances leading up to a job, but does it help me in a job? Let's take your job as an example. Okay. I mean, you're an interesting person to give your opinion about this. We know that you're a lawyer, you're a practicing lawyer. So, how does critical thinking help you?
So, not just critical thinking, but creative thinking also puts a very major role. I think a combination of both. So, if you take a regular day for me in court, it could be one case or 10 cases or 20 cases. It could be one law or different laws. But each law has one subject matter which is interpreted by a lot of people. I would say it is 6, you would say it's a 9, and we make money out of it saying 6, it's a 9. So, how we come to a conclusion that it is a 6, we have to decipher it from a lot of places to say that it is 6. In the same way, the other guy also wakes up at 4 a.m. in the morning and he also going to do the same thing to prove it wrong. So, for that, I think critical thinking helps a lot because I just don't look at one conclusion. I kind of look at what the other guy is also going to think. I also look at the other conclusion which that judge might also think. So as a collectively, I'm able to arrive at a lot of different possibilities, know my strengths, know the other side weaknesses, know what opportunities I have. I think in that way, I think it's a really great. I wouldn't say put it in terms of just critical thinking alone, but critical thinking matters a lot in my profession along with creative thinking, which also we do.
Right, interesting. You were talking about strengths, weaknesses. I think, Hari, we do a SWOT analysis. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and why that is relevant, especially at a stage where the cadets are getting into, getting out of their studies, getting out of their degree, and into a world where there are 15 lakh job aspirants.
So as earlier mentioned, cadets typically will go after Guaming, where while they thinking about their ideal selves and introspecting about themselves. Then we go to SWOT analysis, which is typically have strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, and what are all the resources that they have, and what are all the resources. It could be a strength, it could be an opportunity, and what could be the obstacle to achieve certain goals. So that we usually call it that weakness as well as the threats. So how you are going to introspect yourself and what you are going to achieve it, and what are all the opportunities that you can use, and what are all the things you should work on. So in that way, that will increase your critical thinking as well, and how you are going to plan it to make a better future. That SWOT analysis would be a better help for them.
How would I differentiate between something that is a strength or a weakness versus an opportunity and a threat? Is there something that I can use, not very specifically, but broadly, to identify a strength versus an opportunity?
So strength and weakness typically will come from your insight, that discipline that you may consider as your strength, whereas procrastination you will consider as a weakness. Where opportunity is something you can use from the outside, like if you have any reservations, or you can use any mentors, which who are all comes from outside, right? So these are all the opportunities. And threat is something that you face if you have any family problems, or you want to go to studies to other country where you don't have money. So that's the kind of a thing comes as a threat in that particular situation, and how you are getting all those things into single table column, and then how you are going to analyze it. That's where critical thinking comes to a major play.
What about in your profession? You are a developer by profession. Is there any kind of critical thinking that is done in your day-to-day where?
Obviously, because every day we will, as a developer, every day I will solve certain problems and I will make certain products where critical thinking plays a major role. Like imagine if that particular product is, getting into a larger scale. Now I have to think that this product should be developed in a such a way it should be scalable, and it should be reliable, and it should be secure. So every way I should be able to analyze it by what are all the things that we have. Of course, water analysis in company also we will do and analyze among the employees as well as about the project, and everything we will do where critical thinking plays a major role.
Harleen, we also do Lost at Sea as a module, and it's one of the things that I like to talk to cadets about as well. There are a bunch of different things, and they're literally out at sea, and they have to figure things out. How do you think that helps in the bigger picture?
So when we talk about lost at sea, they are actually they are in a situation where they are dying. Is what we tell them. Like you're in the middle of the sea and you're dying. What's the immediate decision that you're going to take? So you're here, your decision making skills is clearly checked upon. So when you're deciding something, you're thinking critically. That's very clear on what we are when we are talking to them and we are conversing about it. So during this module, we run around how they are going to decide when they are put up in such a situation where they and their friends are losing their life. Maybe not such a hard situation, it's a very hard situation for us to put them in, but maybe even a situation where you are traveling and the tire is punctured, and now what's the next thing that you're going to do immediate. So even there your skills are being taken up.
So it's a process. So we
Yes.
start off by understanding what our problem really is,
Correct.
understanding the resources that we have to solve that particular problem, and then go through that. There's a methodology that works, or that they're put into, and they're discussing as a group as well. And here is where everyone is throwing in their opinion. And typically, we see if someone has an inclination or some kind of experience in any kind of sailing, then they're heard or their opinions are valued a little bit more. But it's also important for the team to think and evaluate if a particular opinion that someone is giving is suitable to them or not. Right? And any other thoughts about Lost at Sea?
We also do like the 10 items that we give them.
Right.
We make them think. If someone, like you said, that someone has a sailing experience, they'll actually give you a reasoning of why this item has to be put up first. But some cadets don't know; they're just doing it.
Right.
They're not giving you a reason, so they're actually thinking about with those 10 items. They're also thinking at why we are saving this first, prioritizing this second, and everything.
So prioritizing is one that you spoke about. Decision making is another. Group thinking is another skill that we talked about, where the cadets practice this during the conversation that they have during Lost at Sea. Anything else that you?
Two things which I want to add. One is where we talk about, not just talk about, we also actually see in live about the influencer in the group, or the person who has the probably a good convincing capacity, because he himself is not sure if he is there in the boat or not, how is he going to say himself. But being there in the group, he's able to convince the entire group with that thing, and how the group gets influenced by one person in a group. I think that's something which is we talk about in Lost at Sea, and how we are easily influenced by other people's who probably have a good language, or who probably is in leadership position, like who's a senior officer or something. So I think that's one thing which I want to add. Second thing, if you think about Lost at Sea, think about it in terms of SSB. You go for a GTO or you go for a group discussion where you need to, the same, they give you a lot of problems, imaginary problems, and they give you resources and they ask you to do something. So if you think of in terms of that, I think it kind of helps them in their critical thinking for that also. When it comes to an SSB, when it comes to a GTO, or even when it comes to a group discussion where they have to describe a picture and everyone discusses the picture in the group discussion. I think everywhere, I think this critical thinking, where you be it Lost at Sea or any other reasoning for that matter, helps you helps the cadets in terms of
We
critical
spoke
thinking.
about influencer, and we also started off this whole conversation talking about social media, having easy access to a lot of information, but being able to determine whether it's a fact or an opinion. When we talk about this influencer part of it, do we also want to talk? We spoke about misinformation. Do we want to talk a little bit about disinformation and how we address that, or why that is something that is important?
I kind of think we kind of stay away have a very long distance from politics and religions when you speak about this topic. But I think the general idea is for the cadets to understand that probably in our country or in the newspapers or wherever you see, a lot of times a lot of things are campaigns, a lot of things are narratives. So I think that's kind of where we try to make them understand that what you see, what you read is not something which you need to believe. You have to think about the Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan exercise which you did, to actually think about whether someone mistakenly told Aishwarya Rai, or if they kind of intentionally, they kind of, so that the class would laugh, they use the word Aishwarya Rai or Kareena Kapoor. So putting that intent to show that if something is there and it's something which is riling up emotions in the country, or even in your college or in your school for that example, think about whether that information was given wrong, like it was passed on wrongly with an intention without them knowing it, or was there a bad intention behind it, bringing someone's reputation down? Right. Correct. So I think that's something which we try to do it, and why it is important, because like I said, you take a Kellogg's packet or you take any other campaign for that matter, be it an ad campaign, be it a political campaign, be it any campaign for the matter, people kind of understand, they just go back to the Shah Rukh Khan Salman Khan story or the Shah Rukh Khan Amitabh Bachchan story to see what is actually the story, what is the source of the story, rather than to see the last ending where Kareena Kapoor and Shah Rukh Khan go to Jammu Kashmir and then they kind of go. So I think that's the intent with which we do this disinformation campaign.
Right, interesting. I just want closing thoughts. We'll start with Harleen. We spoke about their professions, but we didn't talk about yours. Let's talk about what you do and how important reasoning is in the role that you do, not just for yourself, but also for other people that you interview.
So I am currently working as an HR associate. So in this profession, there's a lot of critical thinking that goes in. Number one, when we do a survey, why are we doing a survey? Any kind of survey when we are doing, be it for understanding people's opinions on stress or on anyone's about the year experiences about the company culture, everything. So one, why are we doing the survey? Number two, when we are hiring a candidate, why are we hiring that candidate? So there goes a lot of thinking behind hiring any resource, any kind of resource when we are hiring. So number one, why we are hiring them. Number two, is that resource useful for us? Is that resource going to give us back something, or are we going to give that resource something back? So the critical thinking goes a lot around these things. That when we are organizing any kind of event, how is it going to impact the employees? What are employees' reactions going to be? So there are a lot of why and how that we question before doing any kind of survey, any kind of activity, or hiring any person. So that's how we have been thinking about it.
I think irrespective of our profession, from a fresher employee to CEO, everyone have to have some kind of critical thinking to use so that they can achieve better in their life. So I think that's what we are trying to convey through our modules, like why critical thinking is important, what are all the perspectives that you can get to build your critical thinking even more.
Right. Well,
I think if there's no critical thinking in life, you will never have options, or you will never think about alternate possibilities, which is that you'll just go and just, I will be like a sheep going without looking anywhere, just in a straight Sita line. So I think critical thinking gives you that entire 360-degree perspective as to how I can manage things.
That's great. So we spoke a lot, starting from we covered most of our modules that we do on critical thinking, and we spoke about the importance as a topic, what critical thinking is, why are we including this, and having a conversation about it with our cadets as part of the cadet training as well. Thank you so much for this conversation. I hope to see you in another episode of Cadet Conversations, and hope to see you in camp soon.